This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
He works for Beacon Roofing. His name is Reggie Brock. How you doing, Reggie?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Doing good, man. I'm glad that you're on the show today. I've been following your content for a little while before I met you. Heard a lot of great things about you. And I want to get into some of that stuff. But first, I want to get to know you a little bit. Tell me about Reggie. Tell me about where you grew up, where you came from, how you got all the way to the point where you're at now.
So it's a story with lots of stops. So I'm going to kind of try to condense it.
Let's keep it. Yeah, we'll keep it high level. We'll have some fun with it.
I was raised in a preacher's home. My dad's a Pentecostal preacher. So I was raised around church my whole life. Actually ended up going to Bible college and left Bible college and went into the ministry. And so I married during that time and divorced during that time. And when I divorced, I had to find a new career.
Yeah, they don't like that too much, right?
It really doesn't really work out real well. And so I had to find something to do and jumped into the insurance business. And I was in the insurance business for 25 years on the property side. And so learned a lot from the carrier standpoint. And one day, after my second wife and I, who's my current wife of 31 years.
Wow. I met her. She's a sweetheart too.
2 years, actually. Actually, 33. It's about to be 33. So,
hey, once you get past 30, who's counting, right? She's probably counting. So if she listens to this, she'll probably give you a little smack upside your head. But
okay, that won't be the first time, and I promise you, probably won't be the last. But we had a series of really horrible situations economically, relationally. And basically, it was all because I just made some horrible choices that affected her, myself, my son. And so we had to scramble. And I went into scramble mode, and she made a great suggestion to me. We were living in Georgia at the time. And she said, let's get close to your family. Obviously, it was a great support area with my family being around us. So we jumped in the car, literally headed to Texas. And when I got there, had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I didn't want to do what I've been doing.
How long ago was that?
It's in almost 13 years now.
Okay, so you were pastor for how long were you a pastor at the church?
A pastor, I was an evangelist. I traveled across the country. Yeah.
I know those evangelist guys. You go out there getting people saved. Oh yeah, doing crusades like Billy Graham style.
I wish.
I mean, you probably have 70,000 people in a stadium. I remember seeing Billy Graham when I was a young kid up at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And, man, I mean, the guy had like 60, 70,000 people like in a stadium. They don't do that anymore. I guess some of them.
I spoke to 70,000 my combined life.
Well, maybe one day somebody will listen to this podcast and maybe there'll be 70,000 listeners one day. So how long were you an evangelist?
About 7 years.
So you were consistently on the road all the time?
All the time.
Now, were you just out by yourself going from place to place, or did you have a group that you were traveling with? Or
no, I would have some people come in at times and sing. But, I mean, it was generally just me going, and I'd stay somewhere from a Sunday through a Wednesday, get Thursday and Friday off traveling, and we were back to the next venue. So,
were you pretty much like, because I grew up in church, I grew up in a Baptist church. Did you just pretty much go from church to church as like a guest speaker, or yeah?
And it was usually for 4 days. So I'd start on Sunday and even on Wednesday. We called them revivals.
Revivals, yeah. Did you ever go to any Baptist churches?
Yeah, I did actually. Now I had to tone myself down a lot.
for Baptist?
Yeah, for the Baptist.
Yeah.
Out of the Pentecostal movement, everybody.
Oh yeah, you guys are hooting and hollering and like doing all kinds of.
Didn't do was carry and mess with snakes. I didn't mess with any snakes.
So I grew up in Canton, Ohio. I know you probably know where that's at. Canton Baptist Temple, and up in Akron was Ernest Angley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, baby. I remember like watching that stuff on TV and thinking how, my mom's like, turn that channel off. He's the devil. I'm just like, I always thought that was interesting. And I remember my grandma always loved when the Cathedral Quartet, remember the Cathedrals?
Yeah.
And they would come to town, and the Bishops. I don't know if you ever heard of a group called the Bishops. Yeah. Were you ever through Ohio at all? Maybe I ran into you. I don't know. My grandma always had me at any revival she could.
I spent most of my time in the South, obviously, and
yeah, they like it. They like that accent better down there.
Yeah, they taught it to me.
So you went to the insurance world, and were you just like your typical insurance agent selling like property casual stuff? Like
we actually focused. My latter part of my career is in casualty property, but at the first part of it, I was in individual stuff. So I was with a company that did supplemental insurance benefits for big companies, big companies. And so my last company I was with, we partnered with AIG, and we installed supplemental products, voluntary products to their employees. And, it came kind of to a grinding halt, and they wanted me to move to New York. And you can imagine a lot of things, but me in New York is not one of them probably. And so I declined. And that thrust me. I got to Texas, and my nephew's a builder, and he goes, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And here's what he said to me, Benny. He goes like, "You ought to try roofing." And listen, we were flat below broke. And I looked at him and said to him this, "Life is not that bad yet."
No one gets into roofing because they want to. So what, were you just not that good at selling insurance, or what? Like, how comes you didn't have any money?
The company that we were with, that I was with, got fired basically from AIG, and they wanted me to stay and potentially relocate, but I just had enough. I mean, I just had enough.
And you had a son too? How old was your son?
He's 31.
31. Wow. Okay. So he pretty much spent that whole career. Yeah. Like doing that. He saw you
there, and I finally talked to my nephew again. He introduced me to Brandon Smythe, Ken Elliott Roofing, and Burleson, Texas. Now he's in San Angelo, but still a good friend of mine. And he introduced me to roofing, and I started knocking doors, getting up on roofs I didn't belong on, meeting adjusters. I mean, I learned this business from the ground up, and I had a great time doing it. What I was really, really good at was getting deductibles, because I knew how to tell that story to homeowners in a way that most roofers in Texas didn't. And so from there, people started asking me, "Hey, can you come in and teach our guys how to get deductibles?" And you know this, Benny. I mean, the deductible is the most profitable piece of a claim. And so if you're just like in Texas, everybody give it away plus the television. I mean, it's just craziness down there. And so kind of got a little reputation, and it ended up getting called and did some work with the big MRP, and worked for another couple of
MRP. Tell the listener, because again, I'm not doing a roofing show. A lot of my listeners don't know what MRP is. What's MRP stand for?
Repair company.
Okay.
What it does is they kind of stand between the carrier, insurance company, and the homeowner, and really help them mitigate their damage and loss. So they'll get contractors and other things like that. So
I always find it.
I finally got to meet Beacon.
So I always find it interesting, because when I listen to pastors, I listen to evangelists, you're one hair away from being a salesman, right? Like it's a fine line, right? Between like,
Well, I don't think it's a fine line. I think we absolutely sell. I mean, it was about eternity, and you really sell people on the idea of making a choice and a decision. So, I mean,
but it's like the ultimate closer though, like that, especially Southern Baptist preaching. Like I'll never forget, man. They would get up, and I listened to Jerry Falwell before. I listened to some other great ones, and they would basically just stand up there and keep saying, Come.
Every head bowed, every eye closed.
Yeah, show of hands,
All right, where will you end up? I mean, it was a pretty defined script,
Yeah, and they all have the same one too. I mean, and it was that's so interesting. I love you even more, Reggie Brock, getting to know you, because I grew up my whole life, my grandma taking me to places like that. So what You mentioned you overcome some adversity and you overcome some tribulations. Any that you care to share?
Yeah, I mean, most people who've heard me know our story. I mean, I for a great time in our marriage was a horrible husband and a horrible father in so many, many different ways, financially, emotionally. I mean, I was just selfish to the core. I had decided that my way was the only thing that mattered, and if I carried people along with me, as long as they didn't keep me from it, then I made good decisions. But I just made some horrible decisions, and one of the decisions that I battled most was telling the truth. If I felt, and I could point back to why, but the fact of the matter is, I would avoid confrontation thinking that if I didn't tell the truth, it would go away. I could hide it. Which is kind of what spurred me into what I talk so much about today, and that the importance of vulnerability and honesty and speaking the truth. Listen, your lies will catch up to you. I don't care where you are. You think that you're invisible. My wife used to tell me this all the time. You think you're invisible and undetectable, but the only person you're fooling is yourself. And so that's what I tell people all the time. You may be a good con man now, but one day that wicket's going to be burnt to the core, and you're going to have to be accountable and responsible. And that's what ultimately happened to me. I had a day of reckoning where I had to decide, okay, I'm either not going to turn a new leaf, I'm going to turn a new direction, or I'm going to lose everything that's important to me. And that was my wife and my son at the time. Look, man, we can all get jobs and make money, but the fact of the matter is, when you lose trust and you lose honesty and you lose accountability inside of any relationship, the thing is doomed. And so there may be people listening to this podcast today who only person they're fooling is themselves. They think that they're going to be able to get something more than what they have by not being honest with the people they say they love. You're going to have to screw that head back on the right direction and realize that you can only have produced in your life what you've sown. If you sow wickedness and you sow evil and you do things that are dishonorable, your crop's going to follow suit. And so for me, I just decided enough's enough. I'm not doing this. I'm not wrecking any more lives. I'm not going to do anything but speak the truth, and then rebuilding can happen. And let me tell you this, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, trust lost is hard to regain.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, what was that your choice? Like you're the one that said, "Hey, I got to do something about it." And you decided that on your own, or did your wife and your son say, "Hey, Reggie, you got to get it together. We're out."
It was a combination of both. Listen, somebody can give you an ultimatum, but until you decide you're going to take action on that, nothing matters. So, there was a combination of both. They were like, you got to get this thing squared up. And I'm grateful to God that my wife said, okay, we're going to work on this. As long as you stay honest with me, and as long as you do what you're supposed to do, it ain't going to be easy, but we're not. She told me this. She said, I said, till death do us part. She said, don't make me be the one that puts the death in this to you.
Wow. Well, that's a good woman right there. I was going to say, like, she probably had to hang in there, and I'm sure it wasn't easy. And how long ago was that you made that decision to just
14 years ago.
14 years ago. And then shortly after that, you got out of the insurance business. You said, I've had enough of that. And you moved to Texas and got on a roof. And
when people, even when they change locations or job, until they change their heart and their decisions and their choices, you can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. But until change occurs, until you decide to make better decisions, like for me, I had to make better decisions. It didn't matter where I was. Trust is only restored, relationships are only rebuilt when you actually change your ways and make a hard decision that I'm going to fix what I broke. And that's what I did that was the smartest thing of all. I said, look, I don't know how long this is going to take, but I've broken this. I'm going to fix it.
what do you think? What do you think causes that? I mean, do you think is that something that you struggled with for like your whole life up until that point? Like something personal inside of you that was it a self thing and it just like then spilled over and kind of hurt everybody around you? And
I think for me, a lot of it was early rejection. I mean, my mother left when I was real young and left me and my dad and my sister there to kind of fend for myself. And I said to I'll never forget this. I remember saying this to myself: if she will reject me, who wouldn't? If your mother would not, my mother's passed, but we were able to kind of fix our relationship before she passed, which I'm grateful for. But the fact of the matter is, I never wanted to be rejected again. And what I really wanted is people's approval and acceptance, and I would do whatever I had to make that happen. And if that meant not being truthful or that meant doing something a little bit crooked, well, so what? You know, I'm going, because I palpitated daily regarding being accepted. My heart would just like constrict when I felt like somebody was rejecting me, and I felt full when people were appearing to accept my message or my style or whatever it was, and it was just all facade. And so until you kind of reach a point where you go like, you know what, this is, it's not going to turn out well in any area of my life, and decide to make a decision. And let me tell you something, it's hard work. And it's like, even still today, I have those propensities to like go like, who will know that?
Well, yeah, you're speaking of, I know you don't know me very well, but I feel like when you were just saying that about the need for approval and not wanting to get rejected and always wanting to be liked and doing whatever you kind of had to do to be liked. I can definitely relate with a lot of that from my childhood. Even, like you said, even up till now, like, there's still parts of me that like, always want everyone to like love me. And now I've kind of learned a little bit that, I just have to be my own man, and I have to like live and do things, the right way. And some people are going to like it and some people aren't. And it's a struggle every day, but it's definitely a lot better on the other side once you decide to like finally like get your, I call it get my act together and, go live a good life. Tell me about when you got,
it's hard. Let me say this. It's hard to change the norm. If you're normally in a rhythm and a cadence of living, it's really hard, especially if you've had some success, supposedly living that way. Dude, it's like living, like if I'm right-handed, I did this. This was one of the crazy things I did when I forced change upon myself. I'm right-handed. But what I would do is I would make myself do things left-handed to reinforce into my head the importance of change and how change feels. So if you're right-handed, try writing left-handed. Okay. If you're right-handed, try eating left-handed. I would go different ways to work just to change my brain. And so one of the things that I tell people regularly is if change is not painful for you, I wonder how deep it is. Because when change really happens, you're going to feel it. It's going to make you want to throw up sometimes. But until you can I called it right hand living in a left hand, or left hand living in a right hand world. So I would force myself literally to write left-handed and to eat left-handed and go different directions because it caused pain in me that reminded me of the change that was required to rebuild.
Wow. How'd you get so wise? I mean, like when you decided, obviously, well, I guess you were in the ministry, you went to Bible college, what do you think prompted that? Was that just pressure from your dad, or is that just a family business? You thought you had to do it? Yeah.
No, my dad never mentioned that to me one time. And
so you were called.
Do what?
You were called.
Yeah, I believe I was. Now there was a confusion for me between calling and gifting, and so I think some of the gifting that I naturally had, I think, and if my dad hears this, which he will, he'll probably be.
Nobody listens to my podcast. Your dad won't find it. Don't worry.
I think that sometimes we confuse the two, because someone can maybe articulate well, somebody can communicate effectively, because they maybe dig and understand the Bible in such a way that they can present it to people that they think I'm called. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think they're always the same. I think you can be gifting in some ways and still not be prepared for the ministry. And I think that you can be prepared for the ministry and not be gifted in areas that most would think you need to be. I think it is calling, and I think it's something that that it comes from God for a specific group of people. Now, am I saying that wasn't for me during that time? I just don't think that I was mentally and spiritually prepared for a long-term commitment because of the uncertainty and poor decision-making in my life. Think about ministers that you know who've fallen by the wayside. It's not because they became bad preachers.
Yeah, no, they were still very expository. Yeah, they were still very good preaching. It was a character issue behind the scenes that nobody ever sees. And because it's one of the most high-pressure jobs there is, because of the people. You know, I remember a pastor at my church one time, people in the congregation would write him nasty letters. They would it was just all kinds of stuff behind the scenes that the public never sees that I can only imagine drives men to do, some interesting things.
Well, look at it in our world right now. The people who influence have a tendency to be extremely good at communication. And they can convey and move a room. They can get in front of people and have people eating out of their hands. What does that sound like? A Sunday morning in a Baptist church. There's that dichotomy, of like this gift. Is it anointing? Is it gift? Is it calling? Whatever it is. But when you can move people, there is a sense of power that comes along with that. But watch this. After that usually comes a sense of entitlement. My power can move you to something you have to give me. That's deep. And that's the first time I've ever thought about that. But I'm like, if there's a talent or a gifting that you have in particular that causes people to be moved, and you know that, and I mean, my dad and I talk about this a lot. I walk in and I see some people speak, and the room is unaffected, and then I see others come in and blow the hair back on people. It's just like, it's just like electricity in the air. And so when you get to that point where you can speak and you start seeing people captivated and moving and just like ready to take action, if you do it the right way, it can create huge profitability for everybody that hears your voice. But guard yourself, because if you use that power and that initiative and your ability to connect with people and abuse it, you're going to hurt them, you're going to hurt yourself, and it's hard to come back from either.
I've told a lot of people that, especially as a career in sales, and in being able to influence people, it is definitely a skill and a power that you have to take seriously, because it can be used, for good and for bad, just like a lot of things in this world. But it's a very interesting thing to think about, man. I tell you what, Reggie, every time I talk to you, you always give me something to think about a little bit deeper than I kind of would have thought of before. But so let's get back into the roofing stuff, because I find it fascinating. Preacher to roofer. It's always a good story. How long were you at the commercial roofing company before you got hired by the big corporation?
So I never did commercial. Everything.
Oh, residential. Sorry about that. Okay, residential.
Problem. I did roofing for 8 years. I literally knocked doors, sold roofs.
So you started in 2009, 2010. That's right when I started. So how funny is that? Me and you are a lot more alike than we think. So I started in June. My uncle called me to Pittsburgh. It was June of 2010.
Yeah,
is when I started in the roofing business.
I started in June as well. We moved to Texas in May, and
I better get my glasses on and get my hair a little bit gray, man. We could be like twins. That's pretty cool. And then how long you been at Beacon now?
3 years.
Beacon, for everyone listening at home, is where I buy all my roofing supplies. And Beacon was also my relationship with Jim Stein, my outside sales rep. He's one of the guys that helped me get my business started. He opened me up a line of credit. That company, man, local in Pittsburgh and then national around America, was been instrumental in helping me get started. And then they're the ones that introduced me to my relationship with GAF. I mean, they've done a lot for me, and I know they've done a lot for a lot of contractors all over the country. What made you jump from being, a residential contractor to get the corporate job?
Yeah. So Greg Bloom, Michael Carver, Justin Powell. I met those guys because I was doing some training, and really just training about some law changes in Texas that were going to affect homeowners, their deductibles, and I was teaching it to contractors. And somehow I met Carver in particular. And long story short, he said, "Hey man, why don't you come into some of our branches and just talk to our staffs about what they need to prepare for?" The biggest problem I think with the storm and contractors is cash flow. So we spent a lot of time about talking cash flow. I was working with a company at the time who would fund some the ACV and depreciation checks just to kind of help them. And so I jokingly told Greg not long ago, I'm like, "Dude, you know how many branches I was in before I ever came to Beacon?" He said, "No." I said, "Like 160. I mean, there's 500 across the country." My point is, I really knew Beacon and their people very, very well before I ever went to work there. And 2 years before I got hired, a year before I got hired, Greg called me. He said, "Hey man, come to work for us and let's talk about it." And something kind of happened, and I didn't. And then 3 years ago, he pulled the let's get going card again, and I jumped on quick as I could. And the biggest reason is this: I think that Beacon is full of great people.
Oh, they are. I mean,
and I'm not saying other companies aren't, but the people I work with every day are people that will have got my back and have always helped me anytime I need them. And I hear stories like yours all the time. Like I'm at Beacon, they help me, and again, I'm not critical of any of our competitors, but it's I think that's a story that's readily available all across the country.
Well, what's interesting too is like Beacon, and I don't know what it was like in Texas where you're at, but like Beacon acquired a small company up here in Pittsburgh and a bunch of other companies in Pittsburgh, and it became Beacon like about 10 years ago. But it's like they have a knack though for acquiring these awesome companies, these smaller companies, and then their people stay, and then like they become Beacon employees, and then the guys, especially the younger guys, the guys, like the 40-year-old guys, the 35, the 45-year-old guys, it's like they just keep doing good work, and they keep climbing up the ladder. And I just watch these guys. And when you mentioned Greg Bloom, man, that guy, I've gotten to know him over the last couple of years of coming to some events, man. That is one of the most amazing humans that I've ever met in my entire life. I don't know what it is about that guy, but he just makes you feel like you're the most important person in the room.
He's one of the top 5 people I've ever met in my life, in terms in particular of his character and his authenticity with people. What you see from him is not a put on.
No, I know.
He's not trying to. Greg is the busiest guy I know. He married.
His wife Jill is awesome. She's awesome. She actually invited me to speak at Best of Success. I'm going to be down there. I'm doing it in December. I'll be in Scottsdale. You should come watch.
Yeah, that's a power couple of roofing as far as I'm concerned. But he's.
Did you know he handwrites like birthday cards? Does he handwrite birthday cards to everybody at Beacon? I heard
Everybody, every employee.
Like that's fascinating to me.
So I got to tell you one Bloom story. The first national meeting that I was in, there was, I don't remember, there was like 200 people there. I can't remember what it was. And everybody knows Greg. Greg knows most everybody. So he got up in front of the room, and he does this little deal that I'd never heard of, and it kind of surprised me. Benny, he went around and named every person first and last name in that entire room, row by row by row. And about half of those people he had met one time.
Do you think he got some special training on that or something back in the day? Like, do you think he's got, I got to ask him. We got to ask him the next time how he does it.
Yeah, he's got a great mind. It's like a bear trap, dude. And, but it's so, like, I jokingly told him I was here 2 years, never got a birthday card from him, and I finally got one this year. My son went to work for Beacon, and he got one like 30 days after he started. I'm like, seriously, Greg? You can't get me a birthday card? But yeah, I got one this year. But what an amazing man! And Michael.
I don't know him yet. I've heard about him. I probably seen him at like one of the events or something like that. But I don't really have a good personal relationship with him yet. So I'm excited to meet him. I've heard a lot of good things about him.
You know Phil Townsend? I mean,
I don't know Phil either. Again, you got to remember, I've been working hard in Pittsburgh, so I haven't been on like the national scene. I've been to, I went to IRE to a couple Beacon parties over the last 3 or 4 years. I was at VOC last December, in Orlando, and I've been just now, so I was a Justin Powell guy. I know he's at Home Depot now, and Eric Zarozny and Greg and I actually, yeah, no, and Jamie, I'm in charge of marketing, man. Like it really is a fun group of guys. I've never met anybody that just doesn't really care about the company. I love John Massarelli. I don't know, John Massarelli? I love him. He comes to visit me in Pittsburgh every once in a while. So that was cool. But what do you do at Beacon? Tell everybody. Like I know that you're like in national accounts. Like tell me what you do there.
So Greg is a VP of national accounts, and there's different segments at Beacon. We got government, we got retail, we got, there's just, and Michael, Phil, and I are in the storm. We work with premier storm contractors across the country. And generally those are the guys that have multiple locations. And we just kind of help coordinate, everything that they need in either a new market, opening up, or an existing one. And so I'm on that team. I'm on the national account team in storm.
They have you speaking at different events and stuff like that, or what do you like? I swear I started seeing you on social media like over the last year. I don't know like what was happening, but everybody kept telling me, you got to meet Reggie Brock. You got to meet Reggie Brock. I'm like, word must be getting out on the street. Like you must be like, doing something special.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's like, I think that, first of all, Beacon has been awesome with me very seldom do I go anywhere to talk about shingles much, though, right? So when people are asking me to come, but I think people know I'm at Beacon. I've picked up business because of those kind of relationships, but I'm speaking more and doing, people inviting me to come, but, it's not really, I'm not talking about industry trade stuff. I'm talking about more personal development, kind of life coaching.
Well, that's what we need, man. That's what we need more of. If you improve the man will improve the company will sell more shingles. That's just it's a simple equation. I know a lot of the manufacturers and distributors, sometimes they're so focused on the product, and the service that they provide, and I keep telling them the way that Beacon helped me was to help me like get to know more people, build relationships, introduce me to other tech companies that can help my business, different coaching companies, start doing that. And guess what? Eventually I just keep selling more and more shingles. They keep having to deliver more and more shingles. And it's a pretty interesting thing. One of the things that I know you're into is this new event called Storm into the New Era. If you don't mind, share with me a little bit about that, because I find that really, really fascinating.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Paul and Kim Reed, you know them, and 2 years ago, Benny, I think they had, I think it was 2 years ago. I'm almost sure it was. They had their first event in Denver, and I went to it. And I'm a conference goer like you. And so usually you get in kind of this rhythm and they're all pretty well the same. It's always a great place to network, but it's just kind of, there's a lot of sameness to it. And so you get a little bit just kind of like, what's next? And I walked into that conference there, and I felt like that. I took that on, here we go again. What time is it? When can I leave? And from the first speaker to the last, I was completely blown away, because there was so much transparency, and there's so much talk about this inner man and developing and growing our faith, our family, and then letting finances kind of take care of itself, right? This was really so much about the personal development of each individual there. And what was really cool is that there were great people up there on that platform, that were talking about their failures and their struggles and their difficulties and how they overcame them. And it was a breath of fresh air to me. And I've never been to one like it since. And so this one coming up in September is like version 2. And it's got some dynamic speakers coming in. But the fact of the matter is, it's really an opportunity for people to gather who are looking for a shift. And the shift that we're trying to kind of promote is a shift more kind of in an opposite direction than where most of the conferences are going, and with a real strong emphasis on personal development. And hey, man, this is one we want you to bring your wife.
Oh, you mean you guys aren't going to go out and party? You're not going to be out partying afterwards? like a lot of the conferences. Yeah. It's like, it's who.
I've been to a lot of them, and I don't want to speak ill of any, but I was looking for something different, and I would love, and that's what this conference is. It's different because I think of the way it's built, the speakers that are coming in. Look, there's no pitching. Nobody can talk about anything other than really what they've come from, how they got out of it, and maybe some opportunity to share with others about that can help them. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hear about it. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it because I have that little baby on the way. But I'll be living Evelyn Grace because we all need more grace. And I got to pick her middle name. Brittany got to pick her first name, and I was like, I'm going to pick this middle name. I want it to be Grace because Grace is an amazing thing. So
if people are interested, tell them. Yeah. September 13th through the 15th in Denver.
What's the website? Is it stormintothenew.era.com or something like that? They'll be able to find it. I'll be able to put something in the link to it.
Do that.
But yeah, I actually you mentioned Paul and Kim Reed. I've heard about them. I've talked to Paul a few times on the phone. I met him at Wealth Builder. He's an amazing guy, amazing story. He set up that Roofers in Recovery. He's got that awesome roofing company. He's got this conference going on. He's got the Commercial Roofing Academy. The guy blows me away with how much, first of all, he's overcome in his personal life. And then to be
15 years.
Yeah. As we're recording this today. Yep. I saw that on the Facebook, and, they are an amazing couple, and they're on fire for the mission to just do more and have a bigger impact. And it's really interesting for me because I've always been trying to figure out how to get around good people, and throughout different times of my life, I remember back when I was in my church days back in Canton, Ohio, I was always around good people, got strayed away a little bit, and now it's and when you're in the roofing business, it's hard, right? Because it's roofers, for the most part, kind of a rough bunch of, it's a rough crowd because we're always that second chance. The roofing is our second chance. And we're third or fourth. And a lot of roofing guys, they don't really get along with each other in most markets because they get really competitive. But this is really a breath of fresh air because it's a bunch of roofing guys and girls getting together for a good cause, and they have similar core values, and they're trying to make an impact on the world. And that's something I'm tickled pink that I'm in the roofing industry. I can't even believe I'm saying that. If you would have told me when I was 18 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have been the roofer would have been 87th on my list, maybe 2087 on my list. But I am so proud to own a roofing company. I'm so proud to be in the roofing industry because of the movement that's happening. And there's something special brewing. And the other thing I wanted to chat about real quick before we wrap it up is, we have the first time I actually really got to talk to you. It was we have this Wednesday morning contractor fellowship, I think is what it's called, right? And Jim Johnson leads that, and he's a guy that I heard speak at a Ryan Groth conference, and I'm a big fan of Ryan Groth and the way he lives his life, and Jim Johnson's the same way, man. They live their life, with something a little bit of a higher calling, and I know that when they speak, they speak from the soul, and that's always attracted me to guys like that. And on our Wednesday morning chats, man, it's kind of cool to have, we have about 20, 30 guys that show up on a Zoom call, and we meet for an hour every Wednesday morning. I think that's from I think it's 8:30 to 9:30 Eastern time. And that's really been a blessing. And I know I tell you, I kid around, man, my grandma would be so proud that I'm in a Bible study, kind of with a bunch of guys in the same industry. And it's good accountability, and it keeps us on track. And there's definitely a lot of good conversation in that group. How long have you been in that group?
Since day one. So Jim actually was at Storming in the New Era, same conference I was. And right after that, he started that group. And so we've gone 2.5 years now, pretty strong and steady. And what's interesting to me is this. It is an opportunity for us, though we have differences of opinion.
That's an understatement. Hey, listen, we never said we weren't hard-headed and very, very stubborn, in our viewpoints, right?
Yeah. Well, you said that, and it's probably true. But, even as diverse as our thoughts are, there is a connection and a brotherhood that's been really cool. I mean, to be able to call guys and say, hey, man, I'm going through this. Can you help me? Can you pray with me? Being able, our families to meet. We've got a October, I think like the 6th to the 10th. We're all going to meet kind of in an RV / cabin retreat together. There's probably, I think, like 8 or 10 couples that are going to be there. And so we're just trying to move past transactions in relationship and make them more meaningful. And I think that's what happens. Even though we differ in some thoughts, the fact is it's a way for us to kind of get to know each other and support each other. And I'm going to say one other thing before we wrap. But you said something a little bit earlier. Never before, and I've been doing this same as you, same month, same year. I've never seen there be such willingness to share information and to help other people like I see today. I was at Jen's event Thursday or Wednesday of last week, and I spoke on a panel, and that's what I shared with them. I'm like, 12 years ago, you would have never seen something like this. Everybody's got theirs. They don't want to share because they sure don't want to lose share in their market because they shared something with a competitor, right? I mean, that's not the way it is now. I think there's a whole lot more people warm to each other to help and it makes me proud to be in this industry too.
I hosted a sales training for my own team. I do it every year. And this past year in March, I decided to open it up to the public and see if any other contractors wanted to come. And I had, I think 7 or 8 other contractors show up and people thought I was crazy. Even my own company, even the people in my own company, like, what are you doing? Like, we're going to give away all the secrets. And I'm like, there's no secrets. It's just hard work. I said, like, there's no secrets. I don't have anything proprietary. I don't have anything that those other guys can't get. I said, except for our people. Our people are our competitive advantage. Our processes, when they're executed flawlessly, we have great customer service. And at the end of the day, there's more customers than there are good contractors. So there's always going to be a demand. And I've been a big fan because of all the help that, Beacon, GAF, they give me early on. When other contractors need help, like I just always feel like, I don't know, I almost feel like it's obligated because I actually it actually fills my soul to actually like teach somebody something else because I'm like, finally, for once in my life, somebody's actually listening. Like I went my whole life where no one ever listened to me. And they always said, oh, kid, you can't do that. No, that's impossible. And now I got people hit me up in Facebook messages. Hey, Benny, how do you do this? What's your process for that? How do you do that? I'm like, wow, like I just want to give. I can't give enough. I'm thinking like and there's so many people out there thirsty.
And I think one of the elements as you were speaking that I was reminded of is that I think that we're learning to celebrate with each other, right? Just like I think that there's a shift occurring where we're consumed with helping not just ourselves win, but others that are good and kind and generous and willing and hardworking. We'll pour our lives into somebody. And let me tell you something. One of the greatest ways to receive is to give. And if you can give out, you don't ever have to worry about the give back. Let me say that again. If you can focus on the give out, you'll never have to worry about the get back. And so it's like planting seeds. You're going to harvest. And so don't be afraid to really extend yourself to someone else, especially those you feel like are in need. that you can help, say one kind word to. I mean, I had somebody come up to me the other day at Jen's event, and they said something to me, and they're like, probably were like, big deal. But it meant so much to me that I couldn't even express to them without getting emotional. And they didn't even know it. But the fact is they were willing to. My question is, how many of us are really willing to pour our life, our resources, our abilities, our talents into somebody else without anticipation of gain? Once you get to that place, buddy, life will turn. And you'll see more than you could have ever hoped for.
It's a good place. And, one of the guys, I want to give a shout out to Joe Hughes. Joe Hughes is a good friend of mine. I met him again at a Ryan Groth event. He's the one that invited me to be a part of the Contractor Fellowship on Wednesdays, is where I got to meet you really for the first time. And then I also got to meet John Dye for the first time. Like I've been a big fan of what he's been doing with the American Contractor Show, all the media that he does, all the content. I was always like, man, I wish I could do that one day. That looks like really fun and really cool. And here he is. I pop up on the screen. There's John Dye. I'm like, holy cow, there's Reggie Brock and John Dye, two guys that I've been dying to meet. And then wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later, I'm at John Dye's house and we're having dinner with you and your wife and Brittany and John's wife, Priscilla. And man, I tell you what, that just brought, I felt like I was in the senior high class at like my church, and like I felt like we were just all fellowshipping together, and I felt like it was surreal. It was like I'm doing the same. Like
those are the ties that bind,
yeah,
Benny. Those are the ties that bind, that last, and that you can count on, and you can that you can build off of. And so I would encourage anybody that's hearing this podcast to take heed, and the heed is, look, man. You don't have to build your life for yourself and think that that's all that matters. You can really start forging greater strength in your life by combining yourself into the lives of somebody else. Pour yourself out and watch what happens.
That sounds like a great place to end it. That was really good. But listen, I got 5 questions I ask every guest, kind of rapid fire. So imagine yourself on an island. Yep. What restaurant are you going to put on that island? Where do you want to go eat at every day? What's your favorite place?
Milo's
Where's that
Hamburgers.
at? Where's that at? Milo's Hamburgers. You're gonna have to take me there someday. Maybe we'll have to have a little conference down there. They got a beacon down there or something like that. We can go talk to some contractors. All right, Milo's. All right, what book are you taking with you?
I know it's probably corny to say, but
They're not corny. I mean, listen, my last guest actually said that I think you're probably the 3rd or 4th. I've shot like 30 episodes. I think you're the 3rd or 4th. So, it's never ending. You can always get something more out of it. Every time you read something and it affects you in a different way. That's one thing I love about the Bible is like you can read it an infinite amount of times and you'll get infinite amount of wisdom from it.
I'll tell you a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Give me the second book.
I would get The Gap in the Game.
I just saw someone post about that the other day. I think somebody, I can't remember who, I think it was John Dye that maybe posted about that book. All right. So let's see. I did movie. No, I didn't do movie. What movie would you take with you that you could watch over and over again?
Oh, that's a good one. It'd have to be something with Will Ferrell.
Like old school.
I could probably deal with that.
Elf
or
Step Brother, Talladega Night. Well, if you're not first, you're last, right? That's a good sales one too. If you're not first, you're last. All right. So I did restaurant, I did movie, I did book. All right. If you were able to take one vacation and go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I'd go to Ireland. I mean, that's the home of golf for me, and I've never been there, and that's on my bucket list.
And you got 24 hours. You're allowed to spend it with one person. It could be past, present, or future. Who would you spend it with?
If I had 24 hours left?
Just 24 hours. You're allowed to have one guest. You remember, you're on an island by yourself. You're allowed to have one visitor for 24 hours. Who you got?
No doubt.
Well, listen, man, it's been a really, really like pleasure to have you on this episode, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And we're just getting started. This is like the official kickoff announcement of the Reggie and Benny show.
World.
Maybe we'll start our own podcast together, and like we could really have some fun.
People will probably take more of you, but I think they've about had enough of me.
Nah, no. Listen. I love that Southern accent, man. I'm like mesmerized by it. It kind of draws me in. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they find you? Are you on social media, right? Reggie Brock on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm about on
you want to have it LinkedIn, Reggie Brock? Yeah, reggie.brock@becn.com. Right? Yeah, cool. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you, and we'll be back next Friday with another episode of the Big Fish Cares podcast. If you got any value out of this, I'd really appreciate it if you liked it, shared it, posted something in the comments. Let us know that you're listening. If you got any questions for me or Reggie, we'd be glad to answer them for you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.